for Femi. Nigerian, based in the UK, lives in the UK now, independent filmmaker, actor, director. And a filmmaker who has had his movies streamed in BET, Netflix, and other places, and can offer some lessons in the work that he's done as an independent filmmaker. So, Femi, let's start on that one. As an independent filmmaker, I did look at your trailers for your films, most recent films, Intent 2.
Yeah.
Fully financed, directed, starred, that kind of stuff. I'm sure there are some parallels that we can see here in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the independent filmmaking industry.
Sure.
Tell us about that journey for making that film in that environment in London and see if you have any parallels here in Trinidad.
I suppose for me, the Intent came out as part of a longer journey. Obviously, I started out acting. I moved to England when I was 10 years old. I started acting when I was 17. And I was in an independent film, which is called Kid Altered. Now, Kid Altered is like the UK equivalent of Boys in the Hood, say. And so for me, I was fortunate to be part of that project because it meant that when I wanted to start making my own films, like people already knew who I am, not just like fans, but actually like people behind the camera were fans of the film as well. And so it made it easier for me to go out and pitch. So I actually made another film before the Intent called It's a Lot. I raised the money from a distribution company. And that film didn't do that well. And I remember like going to the cinema on the night that film opened. And I told my friend to go and check how many people had bought tickets. And I remember it was like 6 or 7 people. I was so depressed. I went home and slept. But to give you some context, like, you know, Kid Altered and Adulthood and all the films that I'd been in as an actor were like #1 in the UK box office. So like, when I did my regular going to the cinema on the opening night thing, they were packed. Like, you know, like you couldn't even get tickets. Like, I had to sneak in the back. And then when I made my own, it wasn't that. And we picked ourselves up, me and my business partner, and we were like, oh, we need to make something like more independent. So like we went to our friends. And again, it was easy to get money from our friends because they'd seen me act in some of the biggest films in the UK. And we said we wanted to make a film. We said we wanted to make a street film. Because like our first film was like about a middle class. It's like Ferris Bueller's Day Off meets Risky Business. I don't know if you know these films. Like they're kind of commercial, but like more within a sort of Black British context. And so then what I just was like, because I didn't want to make a street film because I'd been in street films. And so then like my business partner was like, I've got this idea to make this street film. I said, yeah, let's do it. He was like, are you sure? I'm like, 100%, let's do it. Because I knew at that time I was looking at the culture and what was happening within like sort of like youth culture and sort of like what happened. Again, this is what influences my films more so than anything else. It's what is happening within subcultures before they become mainstream. Because in the mainstream, at the time, when I made my first film, I was trying to reflect what was happening within the mainstream at the time, which was like, there was an artist called Tiny Temper, there was a group called N-Dubs, and lots of like black content was presented in this really commercial, user-friendly way. But what was happening on the underground by the time I come to make the Intent was like Stormzy was coming out, who is like, you know, one of the biggest artists to come out of the UK, which is more street. And Stormzy and Skepta was coming back out, because Skepta's been around since I was a kid. But Skepta was having another wave and it was turning more street. And I was like, oh, if we made a film to match this, and then also if we, what we did that was clever with that was that we wanted to build in stars into that film. So there's a group called Crepton Conan, it's a duo. They're like 2 of the biggest rappers in the UK. And so I put them in the film. And then there was a few other rappers, a guy called Fecky. I just put all these rappers in the film because we based it on what the Americans were doing with Juice and Into Deep and Belly and so on and so forth. So like we drew a lot of inspirations from our sort of African-American cousins and then created what was like our street film. But I knew it was going to work. I couldn't get a deal for that film.
How did you get it?
I couldn't get a deal. So like, what happened was, because like I said to you guys, I was making a film that I knew in the mainstream at the time, it was still user-friendly black guys. So like, it was very commercial, very poppy. And so the people that I'm going to at the distribution companies, like, in fact, I want to go as far as say, at the time, at that point, I'd only met 2 black people at distribution companies. And I'm trying to sell them this black film. And I remember there was a white guy said to me, I don't want to do any black hoodie films, right? I don't want
hoodie films,
yeah,
British?
Yeah.
Whether it's from Britain or from
no,
the
he cares.
Caribbean, doesn't make a difference.
I mean, I don't want to do any black films, basically.
Bottom
the guy
line,
said to me, like, right?
Let's go
and so then, and my business partner ripped into him. I'll never forget this. This guy will never see us again. My business partner said to him, "You've got no balls." To his face. This is a guy who's got a big company, central. He's like rips into him, destroys him. And I'm like, almost like want to shut the guy's mouth with my hands. But then he rips into this guy. And we take it around to everyone. But we were confident that it was going to work because I had some of the biggest stars within, like, you know, Black British culture in the film. And they'd never been in films before and they were playing these really, like, big roles. So what I decided to do was, I'd been in loads of films, but I had some relationships. So I decided to release the film myself. And so, which was a bit mad because I'd never released a film myself before in my life. And so, but also what I skip is I've got a law degree and that helps me a lot with everything. So I've got a law degree from the London School of Economics, which is like one of the best unis in the world. And so it helps me a lot with everything.
You can write your own contracts.
Yeah, and not even just write my own contracts. I can process contracts easily because like sometimes people are like reading contracts and they don't understand it. I'm like, but this is like just English. What don't you get? But I realized that's just how my brain works. My brain works in a different way. And so in a way, I understood contracts, but also I understood technical language in a way that some of my peers who are just more creative didn't.
So main suggestion is get a lawyer first.
I mean, like, not necessarily get a lawyer first. It's my advantage. Other people have other advantages. Like, there's some things I just don't like doing in filmmaking that, you know, I get other people to do for me. But, like, you know, for me, in that situation, that really helped. And then I was able to structure. I hired a cinema booker, so I released the film in the cinema independently. I did my business partner was a rave promoter back in the day, so we used all the skills he learned from that to market the film. Because what also has been happening since, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, and I talk long, so you have to stop me talking.
I watch the clock. I watch the clock.
I talk long. Yeah. So like, just stop me whenever you feel like it.
How did it get to Netflix? Let's keep that in
How
mind.
did it get to Netflix? Let me skip to how it got to Netflix. How it got to Netflix was I was able to put together a really strong marketing campaign that meant the film was making so much noise that even till today, some people don't believe that we did it ourselves. So it was me, my business partner, my cousin just came out of film school, so he was cutting all the trailers and stuff. And we just had him on a wage, like just in our office every day, just cutting different artwork, different posters. And in a way, like what that showed me was that we didn't need anyone to distribute. And also what I've realized since doing everything is that I'm always writing a marketing plan for these like white-owned distribution companies anyway. And so in a way, why don't I just do it myself? And because actually what's been missing a lot of the time is you worry about capital, but then I'm fortunate that I can access some capital from friends and like, you know, just pull it all together and try to figure it out. And I can make £1 look like £10 and stuff like that. And so I've been able to do stuff because I've been able to like take control of a lot of things that otherwise like a lot of filmmakers wouldn't feel comfortable to take control of. And then what happened with Netflix was we met an online aggregator. So we met a company called The Movie Partnerships. Anyone can hit them up. Like if you need the contact, I could give you the contact. It's a guy called Michael over there. And The Movie Partnership, what they do really well is like they've got deals with all the digital platforms, iTunes, this one, that one, and Netflix and everyone. So like Netflix doesn't really most of the time go directly to filmmakers. They go to aggregators because they got loads of content. So like they would rather license like 10 films from one company than license one from you every 6 months or a year or whatever.
So get a lawyer, put your film in an aggregator, do a lot of the work yourself.
Huh?
Do the work, but make sure you understand.
No, you have to do a lot of work. You have to, like the thing is,
it's not easy.
As an independent filmmaker, like all my films apart from my most successful film, which is The Intent One, I would say, has been independent. And so I was talking to my business partner this morning. We've got a film coming out in September that I want to release independently again, just because there's a new model that I want to try out. And then from there, I want to set up my own digital platform. And I don't want it to be Netflix, but even if it gets like 100,000, 500,000 subscribers, I can then get more funding to do that and continue to flip it. And so it's like, I suppose because of my legal mind, because the way I look at business, because I'm around people that do business, like actual real businessmen that, you know, raise finance and in a big way, they even look at the things I do. They're like, that's too small. I don't want to invest 500,000. Like, that doesn't, like, that's nothing. Like, come back when you want to raise 25 million. And so I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what, how? Like, you know, but this, their mind, they don't really, they're like, what do you mean 100K? Like, what profit am I gonna get? They just, I feel so little when I talk to some of these guys, like, you know, the way they talk about business and money. And so like, just have the confidence to be able to like bet on yourself. And also like, I don't see my films as like blockbuster Hollywood films, or like I'd come here, like no one's really seen, I'm not expecting it to have the impact, but what I can harness locally in terms of like my tribe locally, if I can get like as long as I can get a 6-figure amount of them, like 600,000, 100,000, 150,000, I'm good.
You're good to go.
Yeah.
All right, well, remember 3 things. I'm gonna switch now because one of the other things that you did was make a documentary on the evolution of black music, black British music, where you spoke about, I guess, from jungle grime coming up to modern times in terms of music. We have music here in Trinidad. I'm interested in understanding about documentaries and movies. Are they popular? Is there a market for that? Because we have unique music genres here in Trinidad and Tobago, and regionally also. And we don't really have many documentaries on that, right? But if there's a potential for our filmmakers here to see an opportunity for doing that. So again, let's discuss the evolution of black British music as a kind of project model for music here. So
firstly, like whatever you do, make sure it comes from an authentic place. Make sure you care about it. I was with Al earlier. I've been badgering Al since last night, saying I want to make a documentary about Ashake because I love him. And I know if I make that documentary, I'll make it the best documentary ever because that's like my favorite artist right now. And because I'm passion-led as well. Because remember, I could have a law job in an office and get paid loads of money to be a lawyer. Like my friends, some of the money they're getting paid now, like 10, 15 years later for being lawyers, like at corporate law firms, like some of the biggest law firms in the world. It's good money. Like you could just have a normal life. And so for me, I've chosen this creative path. I need to be passion-led. I need to enjoy it. Like I need to not do it because like the thing, a lot of my peers, they're like, oh, I don't have an option. I've got options. Right. Like I've got loads of options. Because like, fortunately for me, right, like not everyone's got this, but fortunately I was quite academic, so I did well at school. And that's what school gives you as an option, right? So like, it's not even like you have to do, I've never worked in a legal office in my life, right? But when I'm talking to my lawyer, I'm like, no, have you checked that? Let's talk about this, right? But the point is, I'm passion-led. I have to love what I'm doing, right? And for the evolution of black British music, my business partner, Nicky, he was one of the pioneers of grime music in the UK. So I grew up actually listening to him on pirate radio stations, like as a kid. And he's not that much older than me, but you know, he was old enough to like be doing raves and having pirate radio gigs when I just didn't, right? And so, in a way, we were united by our love for music and we wanted to make something about music. So we just wrote this treatment and we pitched it to a channel called Sky Arts in the UK, which is part of like, Sky is one of our biggest broadcasters. So we pitched it to them. And the guy said he wanted it, he just needs us to go and make a budget and come back. And for some weird reason, I know the reason, like a week later, it was the pandemic. And we just forgot. We just didn't get back to him. That was really weird. Like we just didn't, it wasn't like we didn't need the money. We just didn't get back to this man for some weird reason.
Did he ever get back to you?
He never got back to us. But like, because no commissioner is chasing you. No one's chasing you to give you money to make something. Like no one cares. It's like they'll just give it to someone else that is chasing them down, right? And so then we do a talk like this, me and him, with someone at Paramount, Paramount is obviously the film company, but also owns Comedy Central BET, VH1, all of these, MTV, all of these channels.
BET.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, this conglomerate, right? And so we do a talk, literally like this, for their staff. And then the woman that interviews us at this talk runs the whole thing. And she's never met us. So like, and we've come in, we've done this talk. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna introduce you to everyone that runs all the channels and see how it works. We've got this woman that's just started at BET. I'm gonna do an email between you and the woman at BET. We have meetings with everyone, no one cares, right? And then we have this meeting with this woman from BET, and it was like talking to like my older sister or something. And she was like, so what have you guys got? We picture all these things. She's like, no. Like, well, we've got this thing called the evolution of Black British music. She's like, oh, I wanna do it.
And that was it.
I wanna do it. And then so then what happens when you get commissioned by a TV channel is like they give you money, you make it from that budget, obviously you take your margin, you take your fees or whatever, and then you deliver the TV program. And so then that was how that came together. So we just delivered the TV program to them. They own the rights in the UK, and then we own the rights for the rest of the world. And we're still trying to do a deal in the rest of the world for, like, you know, for that.
It's distributed on BET UK.
So BET UK and Ireland have that program.
It's not available officially anywhere else.
Yeah, but I can send all you lot links or whatever. I can send it to Melissa.
But if that happens, you make money?
No, I don't really. The thing is about TV commissions, it's weird. Obviously, I want to make money from like the exploitation of my work. But sometimes I just want people to see my work because I've made money already, right? So everything else is a bonus. Do you know what I mean? So like, I've made money from making the program. So like, I got paid a production company fee. I got paid a fee to direct. Like, you know, I made money from making the program. Everything else to me now is a bonus. Of course, I want to super exploit all my content, but at the same time, like, you know, there's power in letting people just see your work and like just enjoy it. Like I said, I'm super about exploiting your content. I'm super about making money because it costs money to make stuff, like good stuff. You can make cheap stuff for no money. But like really good stuff, it costs money. So I want to make that money back. I want to make profit. But at the same time, there comes a point I want people to see my work.
I hear you. There's I think we had this conversation last night. The idea that you pick that 30-year span that includes basically the music that you loved growing up as in time. But before that, going all the way back to 48, there was a kind of major Caribbean presence with the Windrush generation. One, are you thinking of having a part 2 of that documentary to expand?
Not necessarily, because I would do a part 2, but then even though I do a part 2, the channel gets first right of refusal, the contract says. They can commission part 2. I can't just make part 2.
So they were the ones who would commission it?
Yeah, I own the format, so I can remake the format. But I would rather just them give me the money to go make it. Like, why do I want to just go, like, do you know what I mean? Like, for me, that's my first documentary. I'd never made a documentary before.
Do you want to do more?
Yeah, of course. So like I said, I want to do the Shake one. There's a documentary we've got called Be Inspired, that a series that we want to do. But ultimately for me, my true passion is fiction. I started out in fiction, started out as an actor. And I want to, this year, in the next year and a half, I want to refocus on that. Because otherwise you just become the documentary guy, which is not what I got into the business to do. Because then what happens is you have to keep making up random documentaries. But I only make this documentary because I like the subject matter, not because I liked making like, for me, I have to like what I'm doing. Otherwise, there's no point, because there comes a moment where, like with that documentary, there came a moment where I could have scrapped it and not done it because we were finding it difficult to clear the music. Like, you know, I was talking about that yesterday.
Clearing music is something.
And so when we're finding it difficult to clear the music, I could have just abandoned ship and just said to the channel, oh, keep the rest of your money. Like, I can't deliver this show. But like, what keeps you going is because you care, right? And so there's always a moment in different projects. A lot of people, like, my main thing is I'm a finisher. So if I start something, I have to finish it. A lot of creative people abandon projects. But like, if you care about something, you're not abandoning it. Like, if you truly, truly love it, you're not gonna abandon it. So for me, I definitely would only make documentaries that I care about, because that's not really my bag.
You just said it was difficult to clear the rights for the music. What was the problem? If you just outline a couple.
The problem was a lot of black people do not register their music.
Say that again.
A lot of black people, and a lot of basically a lot of white people register black people's music, and basically the black guy that's telling you it's my tune, it's not really his tune because there's a random white guy that lives in LA that I know that's been difficult that wouldn't clear a tune. This is a real example, right? and so you know what? Even outside of racializing it, like, you know, my business partner, he had a song that I wanted to use in the documentary, right? And remember, it's his documentary. It's his production company making the documentary. The TV channel wants paperwork for every single thing in that show. So archive was difficult to clear. There was a guy called Jamal Edwards. He runs a platform called SBTV in the UK. And the platform had a lot of archive that we needed in the documentary.
He's with Ed Sheeran.
He was Ed Sheeran's best friend, right?
Friend, yes,
and he died.
Mm-hmm.
So this man dies whilst we're making this documentary. And so then I'm having to go to his mum just after this man's died to get clearance for archive. So I'm having to handle that with, like, you know, and so there's all of these things, factors that you don't think about that made the clearance process a little bit tricky. And then for me, I suppose, like, what made the music part tricky was that I was using music that, like I said, my business partner had made this song. It was just a pirate radio song. They were little kids making music. No one's ever tried to license it ever. Like, like before, it's not on Spotify. This is a man in the business, you know? So in that process, he's had to go and register the song. I've had to contact the artist, because he produced it. I've had to contact the artist publisher to register the song for the first time and go through all of that process. And it's almost like I'm doing it for them, and in order for me to pay them money.
There's a major lesson to be learned here in terms of that idea of registration and doing all the paperwork. And I recognize the people from the IP office, so you may have a second course to do one thing. So we just have about 4 or 5 minutes left. And then I just want to switch finally to the idea of soundtracks, because this is about music and film, right? And again, Femi and I had a conversation this last evening about the impact of certain soundtracks on certain music. I have given an example of The Harder They Come, which had a positive impact on reggae. And I had asked about Beyonce's album that she made, and I could never remember the name of the album.
Black is King.
Black is King, which featured a number of Afrobeats artists. And if it had an impact. And Femi, tell me that story one more time.
No, for me, I think it definitely... And
they were kind of albums
I think for me, definitely, like, firstly, the Wakanda thing had a massive impact on the appreciation of what it means to be African globally, because then people felt like it was cool to be African, right? The idea of, like, you know, what Wakanda did for the whole continent, and blackness, for blackness.
Yeah,
made it like a thing, like a strong thing to be black, right? And then outside of that, like, Beyonce has an impact on any movement. Like, you know, you look at what Beyonce has just done with the Renaissance album, with that ballroom and voguing and all of that house music and that movement. Like, you know, some people don't love it, but ultimately she was borrowing, like, when artists get to Beyonce's level, they almost have to, like, in order to innovate, they have to, like, find a subculture to bring to the full. Madonna was doing it back in the day. Like, you know, all the big artists, like, you know, they just have to keep reinventing every time. So in a way, Black is King, did it have a massive impact on the popularization of Afrobeats? Yes, globally. It's because it's Beyonce. Like, she's the biggest. She's like, I went to a concert. I'm not even a super Beyonce fan. I was like, oh my gosh, this woman's actually the best performer I've ever seen in my life.
2 hours nonstop.
I'm there watching it, and some of the songs, I know the early Destiny's Child crossover Beyonce songs, right? And so, like, watching half the songs I don't know, but, like, the performance, the spectacle, this woman's, like, one of the greatest ever to do it. And so for her to jump on a song with Burna Boy, for her to jump on a song with Tiwa Savage, for her to jump on a song with Wizkid, that definitely shines a light on these guys in a positive light. But was Afrobeats going to get big anyway? Yes.
That says a lot about it. Because, as I said, there was this idea, I don't think as an album for her, in her catalog, it was that big. But I always wondered about the impact and if it had
I've got a theory. I've got a personal theory. That might be a lie. I think she made the album for her daughter.
Just to sing one line?
No, not just to sing one line. I think the daughter might have been into that music, because my kids were into that music at that time, right? And, like, even that album, my kids love that album. And so I was in South Africa with my kids playing the album. They loved it, like, you know, like just because it felt right, you know. And so that's my theory. Like Beyonce might be like, oh, who's this guy? Like, what's he talking about?
But see what? Anyway, Femi, that's all we have the time for. And I want to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Femi Oyeniran.